Imagine checking your bank account at the end of the year and seeing that you made a record-breaking 281 million reals in pure profit.
Oh, wow.
Right. You're celebrating, you're feeling invincible. But then you open your actual physical wallet to go buy dinner, and you realize you haven't just spent what you earned. You have somehow burned through 760 million reals in cash to get that profit.
Yeah, it doesn't make any intuitive sense at all.
Exactly. It's the exact paradox we're exploring today with Ramz Real Estate Company. I'm your host, Hamid, and I'm sitting down with our resident financial expert, Huda. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks. Yeah, it is the ultimate financial illusion, really. We're looking at a scenario where, paper wealth and physical liquidity are just living in two entirely different, almost contradictory universes.
Right, and our mission for the listener today is to unpack the 2025 consolidated financial statements of Ramz. Because if you're looking for a masterclass in reading between the lines of corporate finance and, truly understanding why profit and cash are not the same thing, this is it.
It really is.
Because they had a phenomenal 2025 on paper. I mean, their net income skyrocketed by roughly 77%, but their day-to-day operations were just a cash furnace, burning through that staggering 760 million rials.
Yeah, it's a beautiful contradiction to study because how does a company achieve record-breaking profitability while its operational cash flow goes aggressively negative?
Exactly.
To really answer that, we have to completely dismantle what you might assume a real estate company actually does on a day-to-day basis.
So let's get into the mechanics of their business model then. Because before we can solve the mystery of that missing 750 million rials, we have to look at what they were actually selling and who they're selling it to.
Right.
Historically, when we think of a company like Ramz, we picture a traditional, comprehensive builder. They handle building construction, they pour concrete, they do roads, plumbing, demolition. They build a residential villa, they set up a nice sales office, and they wait for a family to come in, get a mortgage, and buy it.
Which is the classic retail real estate model.
Yeah.
And to be clear, they do still operate in that space. But when you dig into the breakdown of their 2025 revenue streams, you uncover a dramatic, fundamental pivot in their identity.
Yeah, it's huge.
They are actively stepping away from the individual homebuyer. Their customer base has shifted heavily toward institutional clients and massive real estate investment funds. We're talking about, partnering with major financial heavyweights like Riyadh Capital and S&B Capital.
Right, and they aren't just selling a finished building to these funds as a one-off transaction. They're deeply partnering with them. I was reading through the notes on their investments, and there's a fascinating breakdown of the Al Ali Real Estate Opportunities Fund 8.
Oh, yeah. The Riyadh project.
Yeah, this is a massive project in Riyadh. And Ramz isn't just the contractor pouring the concrete. They are acting as the developer and the exclusive marketer for the entire fund.
Exactly.
And for doing that, they're taking a 10% development fee and a 2.5% marketing fee on the total project sales.
That structural change is everything. Think about the sheer brilliance of this B2B business-to-business fund model. When a developer relies solely on retail home buyers, their revenue is piecemeal. It is incredibly vulnerable to macro factors. If the central bank raises consumer interest rates, mortgages get expensive.
Consumer sentiment drops.
Exactly. Consumer sentiment drops, and suddenly no one is walking into your sales office to buy a villa. But by pivoting to partner with these mega funds, Ramz is insulating itself from retail panic.
Right.
They're securing large-scale guaranteed revenue streams. They're locking in tens of millions in development and marketing commissions before the first brick is even laid on the site.
Okay, let me unpack this with an analogy for a second. It's like, instead of just baking individual cupcakes and standing on the street corner hoping people walk by and buy them one by one, Ramz is now building the entire commercial bakery, selling the whole building to a massive private equity group, and then charging that group a recurring fee to actually run the ovens and market the cupcakes for them.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it.
Yeah.
They're monetizing the entire life cycle of the real estate value chain.
Wow.
But this transition requires us to look at their 2025 numbers through a completely different lens, because that shift away from retail and toward institutional funds is exactly what drove the profitability boom.
Right.
When you put their 2024 and 2025 income statements side by side, it doesn't even look like the same company.
Well, I want to push back on that whole brilliance thing for a second, though, before we get to the numbers. Sure, it looks great to avoid retail consumer risk, but aren't they just trading that for massive institutional concentration risk?
That's a fair point.
Like, if you are building single-family homes and one buyer backs out, you just find another family.
Yeah.
But If you were developing a billion-rial mega project and your primary institutional partner pulls funding or the fund collapses, Al Rams is left holding a very expensive, half-built bag, aren't they?
It is a high-stakes game. That is the essential risk of B2B development, yes. However, the partners they are choosing, like S&B Capital, which is tied to the Saudi National Bank, are highly capitalized sovereign-adjacent entities.
Oh, I see.
The risk of one of these funds defaulting is significantly lower than a retail buyer failing to secure a mortgage. What Al Rams is betting on is that institutional capital in Saudi Arabia is far more resilient and reliable right now than individual consumer spending power.
Right, yeah.
And when you look at the profit and loss statement, that bet is clearly paying off.
Well, let's look at the delta between those 2 years because the contrast really is wild. In 2024, their net income was sitting around 158 million rials. In 2025, that jumps to nearly 281 million.
Yeah, a massive leap.
But the crazy part is where that money came from, because if you look at their traditional retail operations, they actually plummeted. Unit sales didn't just dip, they were essentially cut in half compared to the previous year.
Right.
And ARF-plan sales to individuals dropped by more than 60%. The retail side of their business is practically vanishing.
Exactly. The retail side shrank aggressively, which tells you this pivot is intentional, not accidental.
Yeah.
But the massive profit driver, the specific engine that sent their net income soaring, was a line item called real estate under development sales.
Okay.
That single category tripled. It exploded from roughly 172 million rials in 2024 to an incredible 552.7 million rials in 2025.
And when you trace that number back through the financial footnotes, almost all of that staggering growth is tied to one very specific mega deal, the Mazar Al-Hijaz Fund.
Yes. In August of 2025, Al Rams finalized a deal to sell a massive plot of land in Makkah to the Mazar Al-Hijaz Fund for that exact amount, 552.7 million rials.
Wow.
But here is the critical mechanical detail that changes how we have to understand this company. They didn't just hand over the deed to the land, take a $500 million rials in cash, and walk away.
They really didn't. Out of that 552.7 million, they took about 300 million in cash. But for the remaining 251.8 million rials, they accepted payment in actual fund units. Meaning, instead of cash, they took equity in the very fund they just sold the land to. Now let's talk about the mechanics of this, because it feels like a massive leap of faith.
It does.
They are essentially trading a hard asset prime real estate in Makkah for paper shares in a development project that they themselves are likely going to be tasked with building. They are betting on their own success to ever see that remaining 250 million rials actually materialize into liquidity.
It is a calculated leap of faith, but it reveals a profound evolution in their corporate identity. Al Rams is no longer just making their margin on pouring concrete and laying bricks. They are actively transforming into an investment house.
Right.
By taking those fund units instead of cash, they are staying invested in their own ecosystem. They believe that the finished project will be worth significantly more than the raw land. And on paper, that strategy is generating incredible returns.
Yeah.
Look at their investment portfolio in the 2025 statements. They recognized 81.3 million rials in unrealized gains from investments at fair value through profit or loss.
Okay, let's translate that for a second. Because unrealized gains at fair value through profit or loss is a mouthful of accounting jargon.
It really is.
Basically, they own a percentage of these real estate funds. Throughout the year, an independent appraiser looks at the fund and says, hey, you've poured the foundations, the market is hot, this fund is now worth more today than it was 6 months ago.
Exactly.
Because Al Rams owns a piece of that fund, they get to claim that increase in value as profit on their income statement, even though no one has actually written them a check. It is literally profit on paper.
That is a perfect explanation. It is what accountants call mark-to-market. The profit is absolutely real in an accounting and valuation sense, but it is entirely illiquid. You cannot pay your employees or buy more steel with unrealized gains. That wealth is locked up inside the architecture of the investment funds.
Which feels a bit like they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
They sell the land to a fund they helped create. They take payment in shares of that fund, they develop the land, the fund's value goes up on paper, and Al Rams gets to report record-breaking profits to their shareholders. But that brings us crashing right back into the central paradox we opened with. If they made 281 million rials in net income, but so much of it is tied up in equity and unrealized gains, where's the actual cash?
And this is exactly why analyzing a cash flow statement is arguably more important than looking at net income for a growing company.
Yeah?
The cash flow statement strips away the accounting magic and shows you the physical movement of money. And for Al Ramz in 2025, operating cash flow was negative 760 million rials.
It's a terrifying number for anyone not deeply familiar with corporate development cycles.
It is. But when you break down the cash flows from operating activities, the panic subsides because you can see exactly where that cash went.
Right.
It wasn't wasted on bad investments or lost to operational inefficiency. It was literally buried in the ground and tied up in legally binding contracts.
Let's look at exactly how it got buried. Because the category real estate under development, which means active construction projects where they're currently breaking ground and building that, ate up 421 million reals of cash.
Wow.
Yeah, and real estate inventory, so holding properties, took another 154 million. But the most revealing number to me is the trade receivables. This shot up by 410 million reals.
Yeah, that's the key.
Trade receivables basically means Al Ramz has done the work, they have bought the materials, they have paid their construction crews, they have sent the massive invoice to their institutional clients, but they are still waiting for those clients to actually hand over the cash.
Which perfectly illustrates the concept of working capital constraints. This is a classic symptom of a company undergoing hypergrowth, specifically in heavy infrastructure and B2B real estate. When you transition from building 50 single-family villas to acting as the master developer for a multi-billion real institutional fund, the upfront cash requirements are astronomical.
Yeah.
You have to purchase vast tracts of raw land, thousands of tons of concrete and steel, and pay an army of laborers for months, sometimes years, before the client hits the milestones required to pay you back.
It's like they're building a massive citywide water pipeline. Eventually, the water is going to flow, and when it does, it will be an absolute flood of revenue. But right now, today, all of their available capital is literally buried underground in the steel pipes.
Right. They are cash poor, but asset rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that raises a very practical question. How do you survive burning 760 million rials while you wait for the pipeline to turn on? You can't just tell your workforce to wait a year for their paychecks while Riyadh Capital processes an invoice.
Yeah.
How is this level of cash burn sustainable?
Well, it is absolutely not sustainable without a massive, carefully timed infusion of external capital. Al Ramz couldn't just cross their fingers and hope the receivables would clear in time to keep the lights on. They had to engineer a financial bridge.
Right.
And that is exactly what they executed in 2025. They turned to the public markets. They executed an IPO.
The initial public offering. They went public.
Yes. They issued 12.8 million new shares to the public on the Saudi exchange. But the mechanics of this IPO are what made their survival possible. They didn't just sell shares cheaply, they priced them aggressively at 70 reals per share.
Let's break down the math on that because it's crucial to understanding how they funded this massive cash deficit.
Go for it.
The nominal value of their share, like the baseline accounting value assigned to it, is only 10 reals, but they issued them to the public at 70 reals. That means they captured what is called a share premium of 60 reals on every single share sold.
Exactly. And for anyone wondering why the public would willingly pay 70 reals for a share with a nominal value of 10, especially for a company burning 760 million reals in operating cash.
Right. Why would they?
It comes down to future expectations. The public market isn't buying the company for what it is today. They are buying it for what that pipeline will produce tomorrow.
Oh, I see.
Investors looked at the massive B2B fund contracts. They looked at the guaranteed development fees. They looked at the unrealized gains in prime Makkah real estate. And they decided that paying a 60 rial premium was worth it for a piece of that future cash flow.
So if you multiply that out, 12.8 million shares at 70 rials, a piece that IPO raised roughly 900 million rials in total fresh capital. It's an incredible maneuver.
It really is.
They essentially convinced the public markets to completely fund their working capital deficit. They used the enthusiasm of retail stock investors to bridge the massive gap between their paper accounting profits and their physical day-to-day cash needs.
It is a masterstroke of corporate financing. And just to ensure they had absolute liquidity, they didn't stop at the IPO.
Really?
Yeah, they also took on 677 million rials in new long-term borrowings from the banks. If you subtract that 900 million from the IPO and the 677 million in debt, Al Ramz would have been entirely paralyzed by their operating cash burn. They would have ground to a halt.
Wow. Which really highlights why you can never, ever just look at the net income line on a financial statement and think you understand the health of a company.
Never.
If you only read the headlines and saw the 77% jump in pure profit, you would think Ramz had vaults overflowing with cash.
Right.
Conversely, if you only looked at the negative 760 million real operating cash flow, you'd assume the company was weeks away from total bankruptcy.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you synthesize all these elements together, the profit, the cash flow, the B2B pivot, the equity swaps, and the IPO, you see a highly calculated, masterfully orchestrated corporate evolution.
They have essentially vertically integrated the entire modern real estate lifecycle. They acquire the raw land, they package it into a financial instrument, they take equity in that instrument, they charge a fee to construct the buildings, and they charge another fee to market the final product.
It really is a masterclass in modern real estate finance.
Let's distill exactly what we've unpacked for you today. Ramz looked at a traditional, vulnerable retail real estate model and abandoned it for an institutional powerhouse strategy.
They shifted away from selling individual homes and started acting as the exclusive developer and marketer for massive investment funds. They accepted payment in fund equity to ensure they captured the long-term upside of their own projects.
Right.
And crucially, they utilized a 900 million rial public stock offering to finance a severe, entirely intentional operating cash burn while they waited for their massive institutional invoices to be paid.
It is a brilliant, aggressive strategy that requires flawless execution.
But there is one detail buried incredibly deep in the notes of this financial statement that we haven't fully explored yet. And it's something that might just change the entire context of this brilliant strategic pivot we spent this time praising.
You're looking at the contingency notes in the back of the report.
I am. Note 33.2. It's regarding the white land tax.
Oh, yes.
The financial sources explicitly mention that Ramz is subject to this specific Saudi tax on undeveloped land, and that they are currently actively appealing government fees on certain plots they hold.
This is a vital piece of context. Because you already know how aggressive the white land tax is right now for any entities sitting on empty lots in urban centers.
Yeah.
It is a government initiative specifically designed to penalize corporations and wealthy individuals who hoard raw land as a speculative asset instead of developing it for the country's housing and commercial needs.
Right.
It assesses a percentage fee based on the raw value of the land, and if you're a real estate giant holding a massive land bank, that tax can bleed your cash reserves dry very, very quickly.
It's a brutal penalty if you just let land sit there. You can't just hold it, you have to develop it.
Exactly.
But as we just discussed, developing massive tracts of raw land takes hundreds of millions of reals in cash that Ramz clearly didn't have sitting around before the IPO.
Yeah.
So here is a provocative thought to leave you with, something to mull over as you digest all these complex financial mechanics.
Let's hear it.
We just spent this entire deep dive marveling at Ramz's genius pivot to packaging land into real estate investment funds and acting as the developer. But what if the brutal pressure of the white land tax is the hidden underlying engine driving this entire business model shift?
It is a compelling theory. If you are a company facing millions in recurring penalties simply for keeping land empty, what is the absolute fastest way to get that land off your books and avoid the tax?
You package that raw land into a fund, you sell it to institutional investors, removing the direct tax liability from your balance sheet.
Right.
But you still take a cut of the equity so you don't lose the upside.
Mm-hmm.
Then you charge the fund fees to develop it for them, which immediately transforms the empty land into an active construction site, neutralizing the government penalty entirely.
Wow, yeah.
Suddenly the land isn't empty, the tax is avoided, and you've created a massive new B2B revenue stream.
It forces you to look at their entire strategy in a new light. Is this highly lucrative institutional fund model a proactive stroke of financial genius born out of a desire to innovate? Or is it actually a brilliant, adaptive survival mechanism engineered to outmaneuver the crushing weight of the white land tax?
Right.
The truth is likely a blend of both, but it completely reframes how you should view their aggressive push into fund management.
It really does. It all comes back to that paradox at the beginning. The net income is flashing record highs, the profits look incredible on paper, but the actual game being played on the field, the movement of cash, the tax avoidance strategies, the public market financing is infinitely more complex than a single number could ever suggest.
It's never just one number.
You can never just look at the final score. You have to check the cash flow gauge, you have to understand the business model pivot, and you always have to read the footnotes. Keep digging, keep questioning those numbers, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.